Book 3, Pylos. Telemachus and his crew of oarsmen are sailing to Pylos. When they arrive, it looks like there's some kind of festival going on because there's all these big fires with people surrounding the fires. So it looks like it's some kind of a festival or celebration or maybe even sacrifice. At the bottom here, it's Telemachus and Athena in disguise. And you see here, this guy has his arms up. There's a bull on the ground. So it looks like they're probably sacrificing bulls. Okay. All right, top of page 23. Athena says, "Don't be shy. Speak plainly to Nestor, and he will tell you the truth." So they're walking, they're looking for Nestor. You see the bloody guts of a bull. Makes me kind of hungry for a bull burger. And then they sit down, or they approach it looks like maybe Nestor here, the old king. If you forgot, Nestor is the oldest and the wisest of all the Greek kings, and he was an advisor to King Agamemnon during the Trojan War. Okay, page 24. "Strangers, welcome, join our feast. Make an offering to Lord Poseidon, for this feast is in his honor." Okay, that makes sense now because the bull is one of Poseidon's animals. It also doubles as one of Zeus's animals. Sometimes the gods share symbols and animals like that. So they're making a sacrifice to Poseidon. That's what that was in the beginning. All right, so Athena stands up and she's making a sacrifice and she says, "Lord Poseidon, whose dominion embraces the whole earth, hear our prayer. Glory to Nestor and all the line of Neleus. Good fortune to every man of Pylos in exchange for their sacrifice, and swift success to Telemachus and myself in our mission." Real quick, when you see things like and all the line of Neleus, they're talking about somebody's heritage and their family lineage. So Neleus was the originator of this family. So kind of like if you had a grandpa or a great-grandpa or a great-great-great-grandpa, and it just kind of follows down that line, right? So I have a Grandpa Roach, and then my dad, and then myself. So it'd be the line of William Roach. Okay, they sit down, they're washing their hands, or about to eat and drink. And then up here, this is Nestor, and he says, "Now that we have put aside our hunger, tell me who you are, guests, and from what port you sailed. Are you merchants, perhaps, or men of war?" "Nestor, son of Neleus, pride of Achaea, I will answer you. I come from Ithaca, but my business here is personal. I seek news of my great-hearted father, Odysseus, who fought with you at Troy. We have heard the fate of every other Achaean general, returned home or dead, and buried before the walls of Troy. But of Odysseus' fate I can learn nothing. I beg you, tell me what you know. Did you see him fall in battle, or ever hear of his end from any traveler? I pray, do not soften it out of pity, but tell me everything. My friend, you take my mind back to dark days. The Achaeans suffered many ills on that shore. I could not tell them all if you stayed with me 5 years to listen." So Nestor's having a flashback of the Trojan War, and you can see this right here as part of his flashback, which is the city walls of Troy. You see that they're burning on fire there, so it's probably a flashback to the end of the Trojan War. "Even after we breached the walls and sacked that great city, the gods had more trouble in store for us. Agamemnon and Menelaus called a meeting that night, when all were drunk with wine and bloody deeds." So this is a flashback, okay? This is Nestor's flashback. So this is a flashback to Agamemnon and what was happening right after the Trojan War, okay? "Menelaus was calling for home. Menelaus was calling for the ships to sail homeward immediately, but Agamemnon wanted to stay and offer hecatombs to honor Athena. The kings could not agree, and all the men went to bed angry. In the morning, Menelaus and half the fleet sailed off, myself and Odysseus among them, while Agamemnon stayed to make the sacrifice. But even among those who sailed, there was disagreement, and at Odysseus' urging, some of the ships turned back to make peace with Agamemnon. I kept on, and Poseidon favored me with a good wind, so that I arrived home first, along with King Diomedes of Argos. If you remember Diomedes, he was the second best fighter among the Greeks. When Achilles was having his little pouting fest on the sideline, Diomedes was the one who stepped up and took charge. Thus I know nothing firsthand of the other Argive captains, but I will tell you what I have learned since from travelers. Top of 27. They say Achilles' fierce Myrmidons returned safely with his son Neoptolemus. So too did Philoctetes, Idiomaeus, and all their followers. No matter how far away you live, you will have heard the songs about Agamemnon and his gruesome death at the hands of Aegisthus. But his son, Orestes, avenged the murder and proved that the line of Atreus is still strong. Okay, so that reminds me of what they talked about, the gods were talking about at the beginning of the story. So quick flip back. Beginning of the story, you see here, Zeus is talking about how the mortals love to blame their sorrows and their troubles on the gods. And then he says, but they cause most of their own troubles. Look at Aegisthus killing King Agamemnon after he warned him not to. And then Athena says down here, it's true, father, he was justly slain by young Orestes. Okay, so I knew that rung a bell from somewhere. It came from page 3. Okay, so back up here. No matter how far away you live, you will have heard the songs about Agamemnon and his gruesome death at the hands of Aegisthus. But his son meaning Agamemnon's son, Orestes, avenged his father, the murder, right? Avenged the murder, and proved that the line of Atreus is still strong. The Achaeans applaud Orestes, and his name will live through all time, for he has avenged his father nobly. I wish that heaven might grant me such vengeance on the insolent suitors of my mother, who plot my ruin, but the gods have no such happiness in store for me. Now that you remind me, I have heard that your mother has many suitors, who are ill-disposed toward you and are making havoc of your estate. Do you submit to this tamely, or are the gods and islanders all against you? Who knows? Odysseus may come back after all and repay these scoundrels in full, either single-handedly or with a force of Achaeans behind him. I wish he would, but I cannot believe it will ever happen, even if the gods willed it. What foolish words, Telemachus! A god's will can save a man half a world away. Besides, suffering long years at sea is better than getting home quickly, only to find a knife in your back, as Agamemnon did. Well put, my friend. And that's why you shouldn't leave your house long in the hands of scoundrels. Nevertheless, before you sail home, I would advise you to seek out Menelaus, the red-haired king, in his palace at Sparta. He was the last of all the Achaeans to return, and in his travels he may have heard something more about your father. Sail there tomorrow, or if you'd like, I'll lend you a chariot to make the journey by land, and one of my sons will go with you as a guide. Good advice. Let's slice the bull's tongues, make our offerings, and be off to our ship to rest. Gods forbid that the son of my old friend should sleep on the deck of a ship when I have good warm beds of sheepskins, blankets, and deep-piled rugs. You must be guests in my hall. So there again is Xenia, that theme of hospitality showing itself, right? Where Nestor is wise and he's trying to be a very gracious host, and he's saying, no way, you can't sleep in the ships. You got to sleep in my hall, in my palace, in nice, warm, comfy beds surrounded by sheepskins. And then Athena jumps up, and it looks like she's transforming herself into a hawk again. And here's what she says right before she does. Well said, sir. Telemachus should do as you ask, but I must go back to give orders and reassure the crew. They're all as young as Telemachus here, unused to the hardships of sailing. Send Telemachus on his way in a chariot with swift horses, and one of your sons for company. And they're all kind of taken back and startled by this. And Athena takes off, and Nestor comments on this, the fact that Telemachus had Athena, a goddess, with him as a companion. Nestor says, "My friend, I have no fears for you if at such a young age you're so favored by the gods. Why, that can only have been Athena, Zeus's gray-eyed daughter, who always favored your father in battle. O lady, hear me. Grant fame and good fortune to my wife and sons. A noble heifer, 1 year old, that no man has ever yoked or driven, will be yours in sacrifice. I'll sheath her horns in gold and offer her up to you." Up next, Book 4, Sparta.